Okay, 4.2 part 2. We're going to continue with the examples in your note packet. So we're going to use the properties of congruent figures. It's not just necessarily triangles. We can do this with other figures also. So in this diagram, QRST is congruent to WXYZ. Notice they're not in the same position. The one on the bottom is kind of turned and upside down. So you can see that W and Q correspond with one another. Those are congruent vertices. Their angles would be the same. The sides that the sides that go off from those would be the same, as long as you go in the right direction. So here we need to find the value of x and the value of y, knowing what we know about congruent parts. So if we look for where we have an x, we have a 5x plus 5 right there. And we already talked about Q and W. Angle Q is congruent to angle W. So angle Q is 65 degrees. We know those two correspond with one another. So they're equal, so I can set it up 5x plus 5 equals 65. And then I can solve for x. Subtract 5. And then divide by 5. So x equals 12. Then we also need to solve for y. So if I find my y, the only spot I have a y is this side over here, wx. So I need to identify what corresponds with side wx. Well, we know Q and W correspond with one another, so I know I need to start with Q, and it would go up to R in this case. So side QR is its corresponding side. So y minus x equals 6. Now we already found x, so we can plug x in. So y minus 12 equals 6. Just add 12 to the other side. And you see y equals 18. So we're able to use our knowledge of corresponding parts to find our missing values. In this one, we're going to write a congruent statement and list the corresponding angles and sides. I remember I said one of the things you guys will most likely miss or miss most often are your congruent statements. We're also going to go over another thing that you're going to be likely to miss, and that's similar to the congruent statement or the issue with that, and it's mixing up your letters and putting them in the wrong order. And we'll see that with some of our angles when we have to name angles with 3 letters. But first we're going to start with a congruent statement. All right, so my congruent statement. You can start with any letter for any triangle. I'm going to start with A because it just makes sense to start with A. So if I'm starting with A, and I look at my 2 triangles, one triangle's got A, B, and C in it. The other triangle's got A, C, and D in it. So I can name one of them ABC. Name the triangle on the right-hand side ABC. Now I just have to make sure I match up the correct vertices in my second triangle with their corresponding parts. So if I look at the vertice A on my triangle on the right, I can see that it's got 2 arc marks there. So that's going to correspond with the angle in the other triangle that's got 2 arc marks. And its corresponding vertice is C. So my second triangle name has to start off with C. Then if I go to B, I see B is out here on its own. So I know D is its corresponding angle. Use the same colors here. And then my last one would be C, and it's going to correspond, now this is the C that has one arc, so it's got to correspond with A where it has one arc. So my final letter would be A. So triangle ABC is congruent with triangle CDA. Now we also need to identify all of the congruent angles. So if I start the same way, if I want to go back to, well, let's just start with the single arc mark. The one that's got the single arc right there. That would be, that letter C needs to be in the middle of the name. Remember from when we did naming other angles with 3 letters? So we could start at A, C, B. So if I say angle ACB, that's got to be congruent with, and now if I need to get the angle with the single arc mark included, that's up there. So A is going to be in the center. I would start with C because C corresponds with A. And then go C to A to D. So CAD would be my corresponding angle. And if I look at the angles with 2 arc marks, now we can see it's up there by A, so I could call it CAB. That would be congruent with, now we're looking at the 2 arc marks, so that's down here by C. Remember, A corresponds with C, those 2 are corresponding with each other, so I would need to start with A. And it would go A to C to D. And then our last 2 angles, B and D, notice they don't share a side. So A and C, they shared that side. That's why we had to name it with 3 letters. B and D are off on their own. It's easy to tell which angle is which when we say B and D. So we can just call that angle B congruent to angle D. But with the A and C, there are 2 different angles there at A and 2 different angles there at C. So that's why we have to use 3 letters for those. Now our sides. We start off with the ones that have 1 tick mark. If I have side AD, that would have to be congruent with side CB. Remember, A corresponds with C, and D corresponded with B. So that would be the correct order. Then looking at the 2 tick marks, we have side AB. That would have to correspond with side CD. And then the last one is the one that we mentioned shares a side, where they're sharing. A and C. And now it doesn't have tick marks there, but you could put 3 tick marks there because we know that it's congruent. If it's the same side, AC, CA, they're the same side. So side AC is congruent with CA. Would be our last side. Now in this diagram, we're not going to solve for this divide here. We're just going to do x and y. In this diagram, we see that these two polygons are congruent. DEFG is congruent with SPQR in that order. And we need to find x and y. So let's identify where our x. Well, we have an x in both of these, and that one, but the 2x minus 4 doesn't have the y in it, so it's going to be easy to get that x by itself. So we're going to start with 2x minus 4 to help us solve for x. So we need to match that up with the corresponding side. So we've got side QR. Notice where QR is in our congruence statement. That means it's going to match up with FG. So starting at F, going to G, and we see that that side length is 12. So 12 equals 2x minus 4, and we can just solve for x. So add 4 to both sides. It's a 16 equals 2x, divide by 2, x will equal 8. So we found x. Now we just need to find y. Well, if we know what x is, we can plug that in to 6y plus x. So it's 6y plus 8. Then we just need to look at what angle corresponds with Q. Got angle Q there. That's going to correspond with F. So 68. So 6y plus 8 equals 68. And just solve for y. So subtract by a, we get 6y equals 60. Divide by 6. And y equals 10. So we're able to find x and we're able to find y. And the only thing with that is you did need to start with x's because you had two variables, and that's 6y plus x. So you've got to start with one that there's only one variable. Some way that you can find one of the variables first. All right, so that's it on part 2. Make sure you do all of 4.2 homework.